Welcome to night number 112 of History Bedtime Stories. In bed, in our pajamas, and tonight we're talking about the Cleaners and Dryers War. This episode brought to you by Buddy's Pizza. Now, the Cleaners and Dryers War wasn't a war in the traditional sense. It was actually a gang war, and it was over union dues paid by laundry industry companies to the infamous Detroit Purple Gang. In the early 1920s, the city of Detroit had more laundry services than it really needed. And so all of these companies vying to stay in business kept lowering their prices and lowering their prices and lowering their prices to beat out their competitors. Well, by 1924, those prices had gotten so low that most of the laundry services and laundromats were actually working at a loss. They were losing money on every single job they took in. So as they're struggling to figure out how to do this, at the same time, they're fighting tailors and factories who had commissioned them to do the laundry service, who would just run up a huge bill and then move to a different laundromat, never paying it. So as they're competing with all of these problems facing their industry, a man named Francis Martel sees a way for, the infamous Detroit Purple Gang to start making a lot of money. He reaches out to a guy in Chicago named Ben Abrams, and he sort of says, hey, Ben, can you come to Detroit and do what you did in Chicago? Can you establish a union for the cleaners and dryers to then be protected by the Detroit mob, the Purple Gang? So Ben comes to Detroit, he sets it all up, and it's officially called the Cleaners and Dryers Association of Detroit. And it's sort of built with this pledge that they are going to stabilize prices, they are going to fix prices, they are going to make certain things cost certain things at every shop across town, and if a business contracts the labor of one cleaner and dryer and then tries to leave without paying the bill, other cleaners and dryers will not accept them. It's a union. At its base, a really great idea. But before Ben Abrams leaves to go back to Chicago after setting this whole thing up, he puts Charles Jacoby Jr. in charge. Now, Charles Jacoby Jr. was the brother-in-law of the infamous Bernstein brothers, the sort of core members of Detroit's Purple Gang. And with Jacoby in charge, dues to the union became protection money to the Purple Gang. If you didn't want to pay as a cleaner or dryer to have the protection of the Cleaners and Dryers Association, the Purple Gang might toss stink bombs into your dryer cleaners. And stink bombs at a dry cleaner, they'll shut your business down. They may throw bricks through your windows, or they may leave partially burning pieces of dynamite as warnings. Pay up. It'd be a shame if something happened to the nice business you got here. The Cleaners and Dryers wars keep getting bigger and bigger. And on October 26th of 1925, two different dryers, Novelty Cleaners and Dryers and Empire Cleaners and Dryers Company, were both bombed. These bombings affect two very vocal opponents, cleaner and dryer owners Sam Sigmund and Samuel Polikoff, who this whole time had been saying, why are we paying the Purple Gang for protection? We don't need this. If we're going to have a union, let's have an actual union run by members who own dry cleaning establishments. Well, they were both murdered. And with their murder, everybody else falls in line. They're paying the Purple Gang because they don't want their shops bombed and they don't want their owners murdered. In 1928, Charles Jacoby Jr. and 12 members of the Purple Gang are arrested. They're charged with conspiracy to extort money. However, when they go to trial, they are all found innocent and acquitted on all charges. It was sort of the beginning of the Purple Gang's massive influence here in Detroit. And as Prohibition was underway, America's Volstead Act, which made it illegal to manufacture, transport, or sell alcohol for intoxicating purposes, the Purple Gang moves their business into smuggling alcohol, predominantly whiskey, across the Detroit River, Lake St. Clair, and Lake Erie into Detroit, into extortion and into kidnapping. During all of this, the money they made at the Cleaners and Dryers Union is really the seed money to get the infamous Purple Gang going here in the city of Detroit. The Purple Gang absolutely dominated organized crime in the city through the 20s and into the 30s. The Collingwood Massacre in 1931 really was the final chapter in the Purple Gang story. But perhaps the biggest and most colorful was actually over laundry mats, dry cleaners, the Cleaners and Dryers War here in the city of Detroit. Wash your hands. We'll see you tomorrow night.